Appears to have worked. Now, it is shitty pine, but I don't know, it's snug, but it's not super tight. So I think it's probably about perfect. I may try one more test before I decide to go for it. Alright, I'm slightly less terrified, but I'm still terrified. Alright, we did a quick dirty test to see how the template worked. I want to do a little more serious test with something that's pretty much the thickness of our actual body. Marking about what I had in mind for depth on the actual project, just roughly. Anyway, to the drill press. I'm going to start off with a 1/2 inch bit, just so I can get real close to these corners, so there'll be less to route out of those corners, especially this fairly acute one. Gauge depth. You know what, that's just barely past where I drew. That will work just peachy like. But moment of truth. That is the tiniest bit too tight. It's more than a couple minutes with a little sander tight. Holy shit, that's tight. And I heard something crack. For some reason, and I don't know why, and I need to figure it out. On the other test, it did the same thing. On the other test, it did both sides, but this time, on this side, there was a little lip up here that was protruding out a little more than the rest of it, and that is what needed to come off. And once I shaved that off with the chisel, we have a pretty good fit. So I think we're good. I just need to figure out what's going on. You know what? Maybe I'll do one more test with this piece of lumber and make sure we figure out what that issue is, and then I think we're ready to roll. Okay, I did several tests. Okay, 2 times in a row, so I tried a third, I was getting this situation where, I don't know if you can see it, there's, on this wall, up at the top, there's like an 1/8 of an inch of just a little lip. It just wasn't quite as shallow a cut. I mean, it wasn't quite as deep a cut for just that little piece. And I think once the template came off, the difference between bearing to the actual cutting part of the blade, I think that's where that came from, but I could not for the life of me figure out why it was leaving that. And I still don't know for sure. The only thing I can guess is that this test piece is a piece of shit, and it's not flat. And maybe if there was more pressure on this side, because it's slightly bowed this way, maybe with pressure on it this side, it would dig in. I don't know. But 2 or 3 in a row, I could not get it to go quite right, and then I'd have to try to clean that with a chisel, and it wouldn't be perfect, and you can't know then exactly how well it fits. So, one end of the other piece of this shitty board was relatively flat in the middle. Okay, so with this fairly fine file, I did just a little bit of adjusting on the inside walls of the template, just to make it ever so slightly less tight, but even along both of those sides. Okay, so then using that on this, trying to be careful to make sure that we stayed as flat as possible with the big base that we've got on the router, which is just scrap plexi, but it's a bigger base. With that, we got it to where relatively painlessly and easily this will go into the pocket all the way, and it is most definitely tight enough to hold this giant block of not so dry pine shit. Alright, well, the pocket's a little deeper on one side than it is on the other. We just need to map it on the workpiece and try to grow the confidence to pull the trigger. For my first pocket, I'm terrified. I don't, the first time you do something is your perfect opportunity to screw it up, and I cannot screw this one up. It can't happen. Now the line I drew here, real faintly, I think was the plan for the 24th fret. Let's say that's the end of the blank. I think we're on the center line. Just for fun, let's draw it. Put it in place and see how it looks. What I see here, lines I already drew. I don't know when or how I got them. It looks like it's pretty damn centered. It's just the lines that are already there, they're a little inside these, both sides. I guess we'll take this back off and look and see just how centered that is and go from there. Dude. It would be near impossible to get that any more perfectly on that seam. Yeah. Okay, look, everything else we need to do hinges on having the neck pocket and knowing how deep the neck sits and all that kind of stuff. So if I can leave the neck sitting where the fretboard is raised just a little above here. That means less we have to recess bridge pieces. Maybe not have to recess them at all. That would be fantastic, because that is going to suck donkey balls. Yeah. But everything hinges off of that. Once we get the neck placed and we know exactly what depth it's at and all that, then the bridge starts to fall into place and everything else. So this is key. I'm pretty confident that I like the placement there. I like how the cutaway lines up with the last few frets. I like where it puts the bridge, best I can tell. I do, however, need to decide exactly how deep we want to go. See, but that's just an arbitrary random amount. It's just a little above. That gives us a little more than a quarter. Actually, like 5/16. Well, I think we need to go at least that deep. If we leave 5/16, that means we take 1.5 minus a 16th. Okay. That's it for the template. Obviously, not all of this is going to be there in the end, but that's not enough to use as a guide for routing. So we're going to, shit, that's a little shaky too. Coming out here, we're going to go real slow and easy. In here, I think we're just going to start at about there. Okay, we have a little situation. It's one of those things that's kind of hard to explain and admit to. Okay, well, I've noticed we don't really super want to sit in the bottom of that pocket quite right on this side, weirdly enough. And there's a little bit of a gap, even though it's tight as hell. So I finally took a look and noticed that this side of the neck blank is not square. The other side is. It's just this side is not quite square. It's thinner at the bottom than it is at the top. So it goes in pretty nice starting off, and then it gets tighter and tighter, and then it doesn't want to sit quite right in the bottom. So we do want the neck to sit in there a little proud, just a little. But talking to the guys, Ty suggested maybe it would be easier to work this down, even though what we need to work down is the higher part, the up here. So if we can trim that some without getting into the fretboard, I think at the moment we're going to try to work on the edge of the neck some. Alright, there's not a lot to watch here, but I don't want to, keep it hidden from you. I started with my low angle block, and just under the binding line I could roll and get a groove started, but then I can't stick with that very long. I have used this relatively nice flat file for quite a bit. I did use chisel a little bit to kind of refine that line. And then I used my little sanding block to soften that line. So I did a little, and then I took a look, and it looked better. So we're heading in the right direction. But it is getting so much closer to fitting right. So I think we're really close. I think just a little bit more of that, and we'll fall in that pocket the way we want to be. So much better now than it was. Still just a little bit, but once we get past this, I can breathe. Very slowly, very carefully, a little bit at a time. I'm at a point where it's probably worth taking off some of this that we don't need anyway, and then fit and see how everything goes. So that's going to be the carve, so I'm not going to go all the way up to it, but we have quite a bit of material we can take off there. So cut fringes. I think we're good now, actually. I think it looks good. I have a sneaky suspicion I'm going to like the depth that it's at as well. So I think we're in good shape. It's still good and tight enough. It's all in line. As soon as we got it to fit in there to begin with, I checked our lines and we look rock solid. I mean, like dead on. So I think we are just about as good as we could ever hope to be. Thanks for joining me. If you like what we're doing, if you're digging it, like and subscribe. Catch you next time.